Welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered Romance Nights. We are your hosts, Colleen.
And I'm Marjorie. Our guest for tonight's episode is Amazon's number one best-selling spicy romance author, Sadie Kincaid. She lives in the UK with her husband, sons, and dog. She writes feisty heroines and morally gray, swoon-worthy alphas with filthy mouths who would burn the world down for the ladies they love. Welcome to the podcast, and we want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to chat with us.
Oh, thank you so much both for having me. I'm really
We're
excited to
excited
meet
too.
you.
Yeah.
Before we take a deep dive into your books, we have a few questions to get to know you better.
Okay. So, how did you get started into your writing journey? And was this always your career or were you doing something else?
No, it wasn't my career. I was a probation officer, they're called in the UK, but I guess it would be a parole officer in the US. So I did that for a long time. And then 8 years ago, my middle son, he died when he was a baby. And I was on maternity leave and I we have really good maternity leave in the UK. So I had all this time off and I was just like, what am I going to do? My husband had gone back to work. And I found this old laptop. I was cleaning out the house and I found my old laptop that I'd used in college and it had never worked very well. And I was intending to clean it up and throw it away, just delete all the old files. And I turned it on and it kind of sprang to life in a way that it never ever had even when I used to actually use it. And I just had this thought that I'm going to write a novel. And that was where it started, really. So I used to write crime books under a different name. And my first book I wrote in 45 days. And yeah, it just got me through a really difficult, dark time. And I haven't stopped writing since. And so I left my job 2.5 years ago to do this full time. And yeah, it's been incredible since.
Wow. So it's like you kept like the crime portion and just added the spice and the
Yeah.
angst. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, because so my crime books are with a traditional publisher and I used to have to close the door
Oh,
on that all the time. And I remember I used to I just want to keep writing that bit. I enjoy because I enjoy writing, reading spicy romance and dark romance and all kinds of different romance. And I just thought, well, what would happen if I didn't close that door? What would happen with these characters? And that's where Sam and Gabriel were born for London Ruthless, is that I kind of had these characters and just wanted to run with them and not be restricted. And my publisher had rights to kind of first refusal on those books, but they didn't want them. They said they're spicy for us. They're not what we're looking for. But it ended up being the best thing that happened. So then I launched a pen name as Sadie, published them myself, and it's been a roller coaster since, but the most incredible roller coaster that there is.
No, I mean, I love your books, so um, that was like it's great that you're able to publish them independently.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So besides writing, I guess since that's your full time career, do you have any hobbies that that helps you unwind, or if you just need when you need a break from writing, do you have hobbies that you do?
Well, my hobby was always reading and writing after, when I first started writing. So they were always my huge hobbies and the way that I switch off and relax. And they still are. So even though it's my full time job and even though like currently I'm on a really tight deadline and it's really stressful because I have so many words to write by by next week. But it's still the way that I switch off. It's still my favorite thing to do. It's the way that I not switch off now, but it's still the way that I relax. When I was on holiday a couple of weeks ago with my family, we went abroad and we had this very relaxing couple of weeks planned. Well, as relaxing as it can be with two little boys, but I just remember my husband was like, "We just go and write, go on," because he knows that's what I need, even an hour a day just to sit with my
Yeah.
computer and write a chapter or two. So it's still my biggest hobby, and reading as well is still one of my biggest hobbies. But how incredible that I get to do that for my
Right.
job.
It is, yeah.
So yeah.
Now, do you watch TV at all?
Not a lot of TV, but I do watch. So I'll binge watch something. So I don't watch it regularly, but there will, if I do start watching something, I'll binge watch it. So I'm always looking for recommendations
What
and
would you say is
things.
your favorite TV
If you've got any?
series, I guess?
Oh,
Yeah.
ever? Oh, I don't know. I have comfort TV series. So like Murder She
Oh
Wrote.
my gosh, my
Do you remember
grandmother
Murder She
watched
Wrote?
that. Angela Lansbury.
Yeah, I used to watch that with
Yeah.
my mum when I was little, so it's kind of a comfort program for me. But the best series I've seen recently was the new. It's not that new when I by the time I got to watching it, but the new True Detective with Jodie Foster.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if anybody's seen it,
I have not seen
but it was so good. It had like a little bit of a soup. Well, it felt like it had a supernatural twist, but I don't want to ruin anything for
it.
anybody who hasn't watched it. But that was I watched it a couple of weeks ago. I think we binge watched that, and it was so good. Yeah, so I like all
Yeah.
different things.
Gotcha. I'll have to look into that.
Well, so you said you do
Yeah, it's
still
very good.
read a lot or when you have spare time. Do you have like a favorite author that's like you're automatically going to buy or read them when they publish?
No, I don't anymore because I don't get to read as much as I'd like to, and I'm really a
Mm,
mood reader. Like with most things in life, it depends on the mood that I'm in. So I'll pick up a book if it, I could have like a lot of readers, 300 books on my
yeah.
to be read pile, but I will pick up that book that I've just seen on Instagram or TikTok, or that somebody I've seen a snippet of something somewhere. So I'm really a mood reader. There's nobody that I kind of wait for their books to be released, although I do, try and read as much as I can, but it's not as much as I'd like to.
I know you said you're a mood reader, but when you do decide to pick up a book, what would you say is your favorite genre or subgenre? What do you just love to read?
It would be as long as it's a spicy, steamy romance. That would be it. If any time, like I like mafia, contemporary, billionaire, as long as it's got a little bit of spice in to keep me
Yeah.
interested. Yeah, that's
Okay.
my favorite thing to read. If I ever read anything with no spice in now, I'm always a bit like,
Oh my gosh.
where's the
I'd
spice?
nothing worse than reading a book, and this has happened to me not that long ago, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, we're getting into it. We're getting to the spice," and it was fade to black. Nothing. I was
Oh
like,
no,
"You gotta be kidding me."
that should be a content warning on
Right?
the front.
Trigger.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, I agree. It's like it's harder to go back to once you shift to like reading like this smutty, spicy,
Mm,
romance. It's harder to switch back to where it's fade to black. Like I don't think I've picked up any book lately that's like that or anything. It's just harder. Um, so
yeah.
we'll switch with like publishing. How many books do you typically release in a year?
It depends on the year. I think this year I'm releasing
Oh,
6, and it'll probably be 6 or 7, maybe 8
wow.
next year. So it just depends on, yeah, how quickly I can write and how quickly my editor can turn them
Mhm.
around. And yeah, the books that I'm writing currently aren't coming as quickly as my usual books because they're a completely different genre for me. So they're taking quite a bit longer.
gotcha.
Oh, that's
Um,
interesting.
but yeah, yeah.
Now, when you're
So I'd say 6.
6, okay. Now, when do you have to do you have like a writing routine? Like, or is it just kind of like when the spirit moves, we got to get it done.
No, I don't have. Well, I guess my routine is kind of I have 6 weeks to write a book, and I will dick about for 4 weeks, and then I'll have 2 weeks where I'm like, oh my god, this book has to be written, and I will write the most of it in those last 2 weeks when I'm under immense pressure, when I have a deadline looming, and I've always worked like that in my, when I was in college and when I
Yeah.
was in university and in my other job, I always leave things to the last minute and need a deadline to kind of kick me into gear. So I guess that's my routine. But in terms of a more structured routine, no, I can write anywhere. Like I'm currently sitting in a really tiny hotel room in the middle of nowhere, just to have a little bit of kind of quiet to write for a couple of days. So yeah.
Um,
That's
so, you've written quite a few books. How do you come up with the book titles and then the cover designs for it?
This is going to sound really. I I don't know, but I will tell you how I came up with the cover, the title for Broken, and this will tell you a little, give you some insight into how I work
mm,
and how I pants my way through life. So I always put up the black cover with the gold lettering on. That's usually, before I design the cover, I'll put that on Amazon as the pre. And I have this, what is it? An app called InDesign. It's like a photography or a designer's app, and I have this gold foil effect in there, so I can type any word in and it will come up with gold foil, and then I save them to this software that I create my book covers on. And I had happened to have the word broken that I'd done for something else but I'd never used, so I just thought, well, I'm just going to smack that on there and we'll call it Broken for now, because I think I put it up 12 months before it was out. I thought, just because it looks pretty, we'll call it Broken for now. I have no idea what it's going to be about. Anyway, when I was writing the book, I was saying to my editor, I don't really think Broken fits the title of this. It's not. Anyway, I left it because everybody knew it as Broken at that time. And actually, I don't know if either
I
of you have
have
read Broken, but it turned out to be
absolutely.
perfect. So that is how I chose the title. Completely random word that I hadn't used, that was just happened to be there in my images, and I thought I'll slap that on there, and then so yeah, that's kind of the way my creative process
It
works.
It
works.
worked, and it
Hey.
was perfect for that story.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So I haven't got a title for book two in that series yet, because I do struggle with titles. So I will kind of, once I'm writing the book, I'll kick that around a bit and see what comes up. So very different ways, and covers, it will usually be like Broken. Again, I was planning on having just discrete covers for that series, but then a photographer that I've worked with a few times sent me some images, and the model, I think his name is Felipe London, he sent me that picture that's on the front of Broken, and I just thought, oh, that is Nathan James. So, and that happened with Dante as well. A photographer sent me a picture, and I was like, that is Dante. So it can be that as well. I'll see the image and think
Yeah.
that's the character.
I do love that
I get it.
cover model. So
Yeah. The,
He
I'm
is
more of a
beautiful, isn't
discreet
he?
cover, but when the model is drool worthy, I'm like, I think I have to have that one.
yeah,
But I just finished Broken. Was it yesterday?
yes, it was.
And I that's the first book I've ever read of yours. And I went in blind and I was like, okay, I know Marjorie loves this author. We're going to give it a go. I'm texting her at the end and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I don't know if you want me to say anything just in case no one's read it, but I'm not a crier, but at the end part, I was like, he did not just do that. He was like, "Oh, and here's your papers." And I'm like, I was devastated.
I know my editor left a note on that just saying ouch. And
Yes.
I was like, yes.
And I just was like, there's no coming back
I
from
think,
this. This guy, nope, I hate him, but you did it. You did it. You
oh, well, I'm glad you loved him
I
again,
did.
because he is, I think he gets him. I've spoken to a few people who are like, oh, he was so cruel to her. He was so mean. He didn't hear her out. But I'm like, to be fair, he
Right.
thought he just, a terrible thing had just happened to him. And I think if it was a woman in that situation and she thought that had just happened to her, I mean, I don't want to say what has
Yeah.
happened in case anyone, but he thought a really awful thing had happened to him.
Yes.
And so he was, reacting to that, and he thought she
Yeah,
was a part of it. So, yeah, I think he didn't. I don't think he overreacted, but
That was rough
I
though.
like
That
that
part was
people
rough.
got, yeah,
yeah. I didn't like when I was.
yeah. Oh, that part
Yeah.
really. Mm,
Oh no,
yeah.
you're fine. Go
Sorry.
ahead.
No, it's that part was rough, and I wanted it to be. I wanted it to hurt. It hurt me to write when he did that, but I really wanted it to hurt. But he was hurting.
Yeah.
They were both
I
hurting.
guess it was
So
just hard
yeah,
as when you're the reader of that book, you know who Melanie is at the core. She's so kind and she's so sweet. And you're like, she doesn't deserve this, but he really doesn't know what we know. So
yeah,
I loved it. I loved that book. It was so good.
yeah.
I think when I was reading it, I was like, because it was
Thank
like,
you.
they were, when they first started dating or getting to know each other, it was like all cute and like, oh, this is
Yeah.
so romantic. I love their chemistry and just their banter. And as you read, and I was like, when is the other shoe gonna drop? Like, I was
I
like
know.
waiting for it. And then when it hit, I was like, oh my God, he just did not do that. But like, like you said, you could kind of see where he's coming from, but also as a reader, like what who Melanie is, and it was
Yeah.
awful, but they got through it and they got there happily ever after. So, but I was crying, and I barely cry when there's like um like that those moments, like, and I was just like, I'm gonna cry, and I'm like, I'm gonna look like a crazy
Yeah.
person out and about reading this, and I'm just like gonna be bawling crying because she made me cry.
So good. Yeah.
But those are the books that you remember, aren't they? The books that tear your
Absolutely.
heart out,
Yeah.
and the books that where the character drives you crazy, and you want to throw your Kindle or the book or whatever it is, where you want to throw it at the wall and scream or shake them. They're the ones that you remember. Do we? I mean, sometimes it is nice to read a book where there's no drama, but really, do we want to read a book where nothing, where it's just all
No.
No.
happiness and yeah? It's like complain about a third act breakup. I don't always write a third act breakup, and I did in Broken, but it's like, well, there has to be
Right.
something. There has to be some drama or some angst or some conflict. Otherwise, it's not
I
really
know.
Oh, I
a
agree.
book worth reading. Is
I
I think
thrive off
so?
that.
right.
I don't want nice. I live nice. I want crazy.
So you should read Lorenzo then.
Yeah. Let's get our heart.
Oh, I'm gonna read all her stuff. Are you
Oh,
kidding me?
Lorenzo.
Right. Yeah. No, Lorenzo was like, I knew going into it when like when you announced that that's the next book, I was like, okay, I know I'm gonna cry on this. Like, I have to have like read it during like a day off, just so in case I'm like bawling crying. And I did, and I'm like, oh my God, like it's like that was my favorite in that series was Lorenzo. I know everybody else had like other favorites, and I'm just like, nope, Lorenzo was perfect. You just want to hug him, and I love that book. Like,
Yeah, I'm gonna start from the beginning.
you should.
Thank you.
Um, oh,
Well, Lorenzo is a really special book because, well, you'll know it's about, it's following, it's not spoilers because this is what it's about. It's following the death of his wife,
oh,
and it starts at her funeral. And a lot of that was like my own grief and how I felt when, it was my son's
oh,
funeral. And so I poured a lot of myself into that book. So the fact that, I mean, that was the book that got to number one in the whole store. And a lot of people contacted me to say, oh, kind of they'd lost their partner or their mum or a child or somebody significant that they'd really felt that it'd been quite healing. Or so it was really lovely to have people contact me about that and for people to really connect with his grief because it was partly my
yeah.
grief as well that was in there. So it was a really special, yeah.
Hmm.
So I'm glad that's your favorite.
Let me write that down. Is that the first one?
No, it's like
No. Oh, okay.
No,
the
that's
third book
third.
in Chicago Ruthless.
Okay. Um. Now, when do you use like a playlist? I know some authors like to have a playlist to go along with it. Do you have a playlist for your books?
No, I usually sometimes a couple will have a song like Lorenzo and Mia, for instance, had
Okay.
Bright Side of the Road. But usually, music is one of the very few ways that's not related to reading or writing that I use to switch off. So I
Yeah.
can't be creative when I'm listening to music. It's kind of the way that I switch off from my really overactive brain and imagination. So I don't tend to couple my books with a playlist because, yeah, they're like opposite sides of my brain for me.
Gotcha. So for
Yeah.
your for any first time readers of
Right.
yours, do you have like a recommended particular reading order?
Well, there is a chronological reading order that one of my lovely admins in my group made for me. And chronologically, I guess you should start with the LA Ruthless series. However, I think I wrote those books 3 years ago. I'm now a very
Yeah.
different writer. And I think the Chicago, the Perfect Fit, and Broken, which I've just released, obviously, are much better books. So I always recommend people start with them. So I'd say Chicago. The Perfect Fit is a standalone, complete standalone, and Broken is a standalone as well. So I think you can start with them and then see if you like my writing and try something else. But so there is a technically a chronological reading order, but there's no massive spoilers. I mean, all of my books have
Mm,
happy ever afters, so the fact that you find out the couple are together maybe because they're referenced in another book isn't really a spoiler to me, because if there are a couple in my books, they're going to have a happy ever after, because that was what all my books have. So, or a happy ending anyway.
Will Nathan's brothers have books, or do they already?
They're
Oh,
all
good.
having books yet, so they're all out next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do you find it difficult to write the spicy scenes, like especially when it comes to like
No,
logistics? No.
no, not. It's my, I mean, if well, Marjorie will know because she's read most of my books. Is that they're probably my favorite part to write. It's why I write so much of it.
I mean, they're good.
Yeah. So some of my books have a lot more spice than Broken because you've only read that one. But yeah, like the Ryan series or Joey or even the Perfect Fit, they all have quite a lot of
perfect
spice
fit.
in them. So no, I don't
Perfect
find it
fit was
difficult
like, "Who I'm
to write
blushing," and
this.
like my husband's like, what are you reading over there?" And I'm like, just go away, just go away, leave me alone."
Are they all just two, like just, I don't want to say one one couple. I couldn't
MF.
get it out. Or are they white shoes?
No, the Ryans are white shoes, and the Perfect Fit is poly because it's three guys and one woman, and they're all in a relationship together with each other. So there's MF, MMF, all of the combinations.
Excited.
Yeah.
That one
So
down.
Ryan,
Oh, and Kira is one of the Chicago series. The last of the Chicago is poly as well. That's two men and a woman, and they're woman, sorry, and they're all in a
yeah,
relationship
I
together as
forgot
well.
about that. Like, it's yeah,
Yeah.
that one was good too. I really like that.
Why do I like these? Like, why? Because I know I don't have the energy or stamina for a real life relationship like that, but I don't know.
Well,
I
that's why we
know.
read about it. It's all escapism,
Yeah,
see, isn't it?
yeah, and I think it's like you'll enjoy um, Ryan's the is it New York Ruthless? Yeah, right, New York Ruthless series.
New York
It's,
Ruthless. Okay, I got Chicago. We got New York.
you have L.A.
L.A.
Uh, oh, okay. So since we were talking about like Broken, and if I remember correctly, Nathan James was introduced in the Chicago Ruthless, correct?
Yeah. Yes, he
The-
first appears
Okay.
in Lorenzo's book.
When you
Yeah.
planned the Manhattan Ruthless series, was his the first book that you actually um, just planned to write first, or was it his other brothers? Or
No, it was Drake's story that was in
Oh,
my head first. Well, it was Nathan's character, but Drake's story, if you know
oh,
if that makes sense. So I kind of, when I was writing Nathan's character, when I first thought of him, I kind of imagined him in one way, and then as he appeared in, so he was in Kires, like he appeared a bit more in Kires to me, and he was in that chapter, and I just thought he's not actually the character that I thought he was, and it was the story that I'd imagined for him actually was Drake's
ah,
story, if that
yeah.
makes sense. But I always knew that Nathan was the fit one I wanted to do first. Yeah, and his was my favorite story, but now I'm like, oh well, now I'm writing Drake next, and that's really good. And then I've got Elijah, and then Mason's story is amazing, and then we have Maddox at the end, who's the,
yeah.
the enigma.
Yes.
And I'm excited for his
Yeah,
He
story.
Maddox.
he's talked about in the book, but he's
Yeah.
barely in it, you know. So
Yeah, in the end. Huh.
Yeah.
With this book, what was your favorite scene to write?
Oh, do you know I really normally I would say the spice, but I loved two. So I loved the zoo
Yes.
scene, and I also I loved when I actually really liked the scene where that everybody hates where he before
oh,
he gives her the when he says the whole building's going to know your name. I loved writing that, but my favorite is when Tyler comes back
Yes.
early and Mel's like, okay, he's like, well, you better go then. And then Tyler has a word with him and is like, dude. And then after that is my favorite part because I'm just
Could I
like,
at least take a slice of
when he
pizza?
finally gets out of there.
you know, there's so many scenes in there
So I
that
think
were
that
like
is,
really great. Yeah.
yeah, I loved writing that whole book because I'd just finished Kires um, and Kires was a really difficult book to write because of the subject matter, because she was a female villain and they're hard to get right. And it was really hard to try and get the balance of making her a villain, making the MMCs kind of strong enough to deal with her, but also she was the hero of
Mm.
this story or the anti-hero or whatever. So it was a really difficult balance. So I really struggled writing that book. It was a really hard book to write and it was a very difficult subject matter. So to then go write Broken, which was much, I know there's some dark, angsty, emotional issues in that, but compared to what I usually write, it was much lighter and there was a lot of banter between them. So it was a real joy to write that whole book. I loved every second of it. There was nothing that I didn't enjoy writing. It came to me very easily. And yeah, it was just a lovely book to write. So I love all of it, really.
I think
Yeah.
his kitchen is just amazing. I'm just gonna say that.
Kitchen
She's
Island.
like,
My editor actually messaged me and she's like, this Kitchen Island thing. And I was like, have you not got a Kitchen Island? And she hasn't. And I was like, well, I have. And it does have chrome overhead lights.
Oh, okay. Now we know where it came from.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I think I felt like it's like this
She,
kitchen just
yeah,
see
sorry.
a lot of things. It was just perfect. Yeah.
That's funny.
Um. Okay, so I know we kind of you kind of told us like who like the next brothers that are getting the books and stuff. Are you still able to spoil any details or
For
or
the next one.
for the next one, or I guess the series that you're writing that's going to be published next?
Yeah, I can give you a little spoiler about Drake. So Drake currently lives in Chicago, as we know from Broken and from the Moretti books. So he is going to move back to New York because it's going to be the Manhattan Ruthless series. So I will tell you that's a spoiler about that, and then spoilers about my new series is a paranormal fantasy kind of hybrid trilogy that I'm writing. It's got vampires, it's got werewolves, it's got witches, it's got some other magical creatures that I'm not revealing just yet. But that started as I was talking to a writer friend of mine, Jenny Madore, and we were talking actually last year. We'd had a few cocktails, and we were talking about how great would it be to write mafia
Mm.
vampires. So that was the original idea. I was just going to write my usual mafia books, but they were going to be vampires. And then I started writing this trilogy, and it just again part of my process is I don't really have a plot. I just sit and have a character, and I sit and I start writing. And these characters just went really a bit wild and did their own thing and refused to they don't want to be in the mafia. They're like, no, we're going to have a whole new world all of our own. So it became so much bigger, and that's where the fantasy elements come in because it's kind of like this different world and prophecies and all kinds of things. So it's a lot of fun but also a lot of hard work, and it's driving me a little bit insane,
That's good.
but in a good way. So they are coming out in that is another poly relationship. So there's four vampires. There's one um female who's like this 19-year-old college student who's very naive, and but she happens to be like one of the most powerful
Oh,
beings
cool.
on the planet. She doesn't know Um, so it's really interesting and it's really good writing her character developing, and she kind of doesn't know anything about who she is, not just actually because of she doesn't know about these powers, but she just doesn't really know herself or what she wants, and it's really good to write her story and how she develops and how she kind of steps into this power. And I think it's really like for women, I don't want to get too deep here, but I think women, a lot of women struggle. I used to work with a lot of women who'd been like victims of abuse, and I think a lot of women struggle with that kind of sense of who we are in society and kind of acknowledging the power that we have and stepping into that and owning it, and and being confident and assertive and not wanting to be seen as pushy or bossy
Right.
or arrogant, and the things that men are praised for. Women who display those qualities can be kind of criticized for. So I think it's just a really interesting story to write for so many reasons, but yeah, they're not it's much more complex than I originally intended it to
I'm
be.
Is
excited.
this your first
But
paranormal?
I hope,
Oh, good.
yes, it is. Yeah, so nerve wracking because also I'm not sure if my readers, I know I have a core group of readers who will read it, but will my wider readership enjoy it, or will I completely miss the paranormal fantasy mark because it's new to me, and so many unknowns with it. But
Well, you don't know until you try, so
Right.
I guess, right? I know I'll read it. I dabble in a little bit of
yep,
everything. Everything.
yeah.
I used to read paranormal, but since you're my favorite, one of my go-to authors, like, I'm gonna read it. So
Oh well, I
Yeah.
appreciate your faith in me, but it's also I'm not someone who likes a comfort zone. So I'd written so much mafia, and that's why I wanted to do something slightly different with the Manhattan series. So that's not mafia; it's billionaire. But I really wanted to kind of push my writing and try and develop my skills and do something completely different. So that's why I tried this. And when I'm in the kind of the trenches and I'm complaining to my editor that I'm going insane, and she's like, just remember why you did this. You wanted to stretch yourself. You wanted to do something different. You don't like living in that comfort and bubble. You like to, So I have to keep remembering that's why
Yeah.
I'm doing it.
no, no, but they work. Like, Perfect Fit was, like you're in between your other series, and it worked. It was
Yeah.
enjoyable. I love that. I would say though, I wanted more for some reason. I was like, I know they get their HEA, but it's like I want more. Like, just, you know. But yeah.
I get a lot of messages from people about that book. Like, can we have a sequel? Can we have a prequel? Can we? Yeah, people love those characters, and I absolutely love that. And maybe
Mm.
one day I will, but I have so much to write. I don't know when I could squeeze it in.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Who, out of all the characters, couples that you've written, who would you say is your favorite?
Okay, I get asked this question all the time, and I always have an answer, which surprises a lot of people. It's Shane Ryan, who's one of my Ryan brothers.
Okay.
So he is the oldest brother, and I think now, I mean, it's sometimes difficult to get into characters' heads, particularly if you've written them a long time ago. But he is always in my head. I could write something from his. In fact, I wrote a couple of things for a promo thing I'm doing for the shorts the other day, and it was so easy just to tap back into his head and write something from his point of view. So I think now, whilst I think there's other characters who are more developed than his, like Nathan James is one of
Mm.
my favorite characters, and I think he's a better character than Shane. But Shane will always be my favorite because he's been with me
Oh.
for so long, and yeah, he's just always there, chatting, talking to me like, Sadie, write me another story.
I mean, I would read it because out of all the siblings, he's my favorite. I know he's not like everybody's favorite, and I'm just like, but
No,
I love him. He's like, his character was like, when you read their story, his character develops, as you go along, as you read each book, and I like how his relationship with Jesse came about. Like he wasn't, sorry for spoiling for people who
No.
hasn't read it, but like they weren't like, right away like Right, it
It
wasn't
wasn't insta
instant.
love, was it?
But boy, I love him. Like his office, like yeah,
Yeah, his chair,
yeah. It's
his
just like
desk. Yeah, and he fought it for so. That was what I really enjoyed writing about him, was that we all knew, the reader knew how much he wanted it, but he fought it for so long, didn't he? And then when he gave in, that was one of my favorite scenes I've ever written. When he comes back from, I think he's in Chicago, isn't he? He comes back from Chicago and just drops the bag on the floor. I loved
yeah,
that scene.
yeah. Once he
Loved it.
finally was like, "Fine, I'm
Yeah,
like we're doing this," and he was just all in at that point. So I do. I love their.
yeah.
Um, I love him. Like he's always there. Yeah. um, okay, so well, I guess you answered this because you are doing the paranormal. I was gonna ask like any other genre, but like you're doing paranormal. So if people did not listen to that, you're doing paranormal soon, or you're writing them. Um, okay, so this one, because I'm selfish and I wanted more for this book. In the perfect fit, we see kind of like you touch base a little bit on Lily's backstory, history, like where she came from. Um, Distant, near future, would there be any book regarding her family or?
I would love to do a book for Nico and Dean, and also for oh my goodness, I've forgotten their names, and I don't want to say who she is to her because I don't want to spoil it. But
Thank you.
oh, what was her name? You know who I mean? And the
Mhm.
bodyguard, the mafia female mafia boss, and the bodyguard. I'd like to do their story as
I'm
well.
gonna have to read this book
So
next. The perfect fit.
That wasn't standalone.
you just add into
I
it.
have to. I know. I'm making my notes. It's what I do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the
Um.
only series that I haven't read, which I just bought the ebook, is like The London Ruthless. And I'm just like, okay, I need to get into that.
The London series is a very different. It's got a different vibe. I was a very different writer then. I will say it's quite different to my other books, and I know a lot of people who've read my other books don't like London. There's some people who love London and it's their favorite, but it is. I will. It's kind of like a trigger warning.
No.
It is quite different. Yeah. So, but if you enjoy it, if you don't, it's fine.
Um. Oh, what about? Do you have any book signings that you're going to be attending coming up?
Yeah, I have a whole calendar of them. So I'm at Rare Edinburgh next week for
Nice.
anybody who's there next weekend. That's my last one for this year because I've done quite a lot this year. I've done 3 American signings. And then next year I will be announcing a signing very shortly. See, it's knowing what I
Oh,
can
okay.
announce and what I can talk about. I'm doing London. No, I'm doing London Rare next July, and then I'm doing a US one in the spring that I'll be able to announce shortly. London Rare in July, and then Tennessee LitCon in September. I'm also doing Fiction Fans and Ball Gowns in Nottinghamshire in the UK in March, and I've got another one in the US later in the year, but I can't say
Citizen
that one yet. I
Stardust.
don't
Just
think
kidding.
so.
No, I
Don't
like.
answer. I don't want to get you in trouble.
There's a lot going on, and I do love because signing. I do a lot of signings because they're my one of the favorite parts of the job for me because I love meeting readers and seeing readers because it's all about readers, and it's such a isolating
Oh,
profession just to be at your laptop or your computer all day
yeah.
typing words, and it's really nice to see that and meet the people who read those words and who have those people who say that your words have had an impact on them, and that's really one of the best parts of the
Yeah.
job for me. So I love doing sign. I will always do as
You
many as
Well,
said
I
you're
girl, we
can.
love you.
right. You're going to Tennessee in September next year, you said?
She said, write that down.
I'm writing it down.
Yes, Tennessee LitCon.
Oh, I always wanted to go to Tennessee, Marjorie.
Okay, maybe we should do that.
Wink, wink.
Well, I did Nashville in July, and that was a different sign, and that was Romance era experience, and that was so good. And me and Mr. Kincaid went, and we had such an incredible time. I love
Oh,
Nashville. But Tennessee LitCon is in Kingsport, which is a different part of Tennessee, isn't it? I'm not sure how far away from Nashville it is, but we do want to squeeze in a night in Nashville if we can.
That'll be
We'll have
fun.
to
I've
wait and
never
see.
been to Nashville. I keep saying I'm gonna go, but these kids get in the way.
It is amazing, and I got the best cowboy boots I've ever seen. They were incredible from the
Mm.
Boot
Yes, Boot
Barn.
Barn.
They were just
Yes.
amazing.
I have
Yep.
like we have a boot barn here, like a mile away from our house, so we always go there for boots. But I've been to Tennessee. We've driven through Nashville and kind of hanged out in
You're
there
lucky.
before, but I will go again just to meet Sadie next year. I'm gonna have to research more on that one for tickets and
Yes,
stuff.
let's do it. Even though she's
I think tickets are on sale next week. I'm
Okay.
sure they do.
oh, they go on sale next
Yeah,
week.
Okay.
I'm sure they do. Oh, I think it's the 8th. I posted it on a story the
I'll
other day,
check
but I'll
the.
double check. If you look on John's page on
Okay.
Instagram, it'll say.
I want to go.
Yeah, me
There
too.
we go. This way I can wear my cowboy boots, my dazzly ones.
Mine are dazzly,
Are they
very
white?
sparkly.
Are they like a off-white color?
No, they're like a distressed leather, but they have all these bedazzled jewels on. They're just amazing. I can't do them justice
You'll have
in
to bring them
description.
next year so we can see them.
Oh, I will. They'll be in
So
my
we'll have to
suitcase.
find someone that's wearing bedazzled, bedazzled cowboy boots, and we're like, "That's Sadie." You
The boots.
know?
I think if you look on my Instagram page, I think I did some pictures of Nashville, and I'm sure there's a picture
All
of the
right, I'm
boots
looking.
in there. Definitely in my group.
I'm gonna have to look.
I have to find that. Okay, so do you have any special editions coming out this year, or do you usually just do them for signings?
I have the. I have never done any for signings myself. I've done them as part of book boxes, and I know there's the beautiful Fear's King and Queen books from. They are just absolutely
Aren't they?
gorgeous. By the way, they're so yes, they're incredible. And are they just going to be available at your store, or are they?
Just at my store, like
Yeah.
online, and then I do plan on opening a brick and mortar here in Montana next year, so they'll be in there as well.
Well, when you do, we should have a book signing at your store. That would be amazing.
That's what I like.
Yeah.
That's what I'm planning is like the very opening will be like, okay, let's have majority of the
Yeah.
authors that I have and have a signing.
That would be amazing. And I've never been to Montana. Yeah. I want to go everywhere.
It's
So they are absolutely stunning, by the way. But yeah, I do want to have some special editions for signings next year because, and I get so many requests for them, but it's one of the things that's always on the bottom of my to-do list because I'm always writing and doing all the other things, but it is something I do want to explore.
The
So
one that the Fierce King, what is it? Fierce. Which series is that from?
First King,
LA?
LA.
Okay.
LA Ruthless. That's the very first book I read, and that's the book that I fell in love with Sadie because I know there's like so many MMCs out there, but Alejandro is one of my favorite.
Yeah.
Just,
Well, he's Mr. Kincaid's favourite because it was Alejandro who changed our life, really, because it was that book that really, took off. That was the first book that got into the
Wow.
top 100 in the US. And that was the book that enabled me to leave my job. And so it really changed our life, that one. So that is Mr. Kincaid's favourite book as well. He's his favourite character.
Do you have it displayed somewhere in your house?
Yeah.
You have
No?
to. Like, musicians
Maybe I
put their golden records up. You put up a golden book.
Yeah, I should have. Yeah, I should have.
Mm.
I've got a copy of him on my shelf, so he's
Okay.
there as a trophy.
Well,
yeah, I mean Alejandro just hits different, really. I mean, I know like not everyone loves him, but I love him.
I usually trust your recommendations.
He was just he was just such like yeah, I love his character actually, but I think just because I've written him so long ago now, and I haven't written him for a
Mhm.
long time, like for the Ryans, I write them all the time because I've still been doing the shorts and things, but yeah, I do love his character. Yeah, he was a lot of fun to write.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean between him and Jax, like their friendship
Yeah,
is. I love their friendship. Like,
yeah.
Mm. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode. So I want to thank you so much, number one, for writing all these books, and number two, for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure. So,
Thank you both for having me. I can't believe it's gone so
yeah,
fast.
we rolled through it.
yeah, right.
So be sure, everyone, to follow us on our socials. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast. You don't want to miss out on any future episodes. If you have any authors you would like to recommend, please send us a DM on Instagram or TikTok. So that's all. See you next time.